Guided by the conference theme, Helping the Helpers, Leading the Leaders, Shaping the Future, Nikki will share her perspective with us today in an address entitled, The Future is Shaped by Those Who Listen. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Virginia Tech's University Distinguished Professor, Dr. Nikki Giovanni.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I thought, well, if Gerald keeps that up, I'm just going to say thank you. And no, you know, because you don't really think about what you do in the past, and so it's always very nice to hear that you've done nice things. And when my mother was here, you know, Mommy would have just been thrilled. She was like, "See, my baby did something." But so, that's the nature of mothers. But I want to thank my good friends Adrian and Joanne for being here with me this morning and giving me my Fisk pen. I'm a Fisk graduate. And so we know that the HBCUs are important. Nobody says why is Notre Dame important, right? That's true. Nobody says why is Brandeis important. But all of a sudden it's a black school and it's like, we don't know if we need them. Well, hell yes, you need them. How are we going to? What do you do? Good schools, and they do good work. And how else are we going to bring kids? I'm a big fan. This is about nothing for a minute. I'm a big fan of Let's Occupy Wall Street. All of those kids. Oh yeah. I saw your minority leader, Cantor, who unfortunately is from Virginia. We are embarrassed about this, and we are. Anybody got sense is embarrassed. Cantor's talking about they're a mob. How did you get to be a mob when there's a Constitution that gives you a Fourth Amendment right to peaceably assemble? How'd you get to be a mob because you're saying, you know, damn it, I graduated from college, I've worked hard, and I don't have a job because you're giving tax breaks to billionaires because somehow or another that's supposed to be all right. And it's not. It's not. And I just really hate, and then I'll stop, but I just really hate it when I hear people say things like, that's what makes jobs. Rich people make jobs. No, rich people suck jobs up. That's why every time you have a merger, 30,000 people lose their jobs. Obviously, you know, somebody needs to call somebody, the president, God, whoever. I said to my students, no, I decided, you know how you think, what should my life work be? I'm sure we all think that, you know. What should my life work be? I've enjoyed being a poet and a professor and things like that, but I finally realized God should be an elective office, and I'm going to run for God. And and the reason I want to be God is that I can smite. I definitely, it's an awesome power, you know, and I'm like, you know, some gods are kind. You know, the one that most of us, we're Christian, God is forgiving. I'm not into that mood. I'm more Greek, you know, and I think we need to think about that. I'm gonna lose my job fooling around like that. But I just wanted to mention that because it makes you kind of crazy. These are hard times, and we are helpers. I know that you do it more than I do. I sit in a classroom and stuff. But you have youngsters who are worried about what they're going to do. We can't educate those youngsters. I'm at Virginia Tech. We're not educating those youngsters so that they can get a job. We're educating those youngsters so that they can solidify their values and learn how to go forward, because you may not get a job, but you still have to be a good person. I think you should get a job too, don't misunderstand. But what I'm saying to my students is this is not trade school. You don't read a book so that you can then say, I read 550 books. I hate that. Let me just share that for a minute. Well, since I got you here, no, I hate that. Every summer, McDonald's or somebody that's giving them food that's going to kill them, because that's why diabetes is the biggest, and I'm not against McDonald's, but diabetes is the fastest growing disease in America because these people are eating this bad food that we are subsidizing with all of this corn. That's a whole nother discussion, I know. But then they say to the kids, sign up for all of these damn books that you read, and we'll give you a certificate for what? Pizza. I wish I ate pizza so that I could boycott Godfather pizza, because I really hate Herman Cain and the crap that he's doing. No, he's a fool. Don't sit there and tell me. I said that to my students. Let me just share this. And then I'll stop. Wait a minute. Because I'm at a school that's relatively conservative. We're good people, but, you know, the kids are like, you know, Nikki, you're always picking on the rich, you know. And everything, the letters have been flying like, you know, you have class envy. I said, hell yes, I have class envy. If I don't envy the rich, who am I envying? You think I'm going to envy the homeless? Like, damn, I wish I could be homeless. No. We don't envy the homeless. We envy the rich and the beautiful and the famous. That's what you envy. If they don't like that, they can give up part of it. Of course, we have class envy. If some class is sucking up all of the goodies, the rest of us are going to not like them. If we don't bring the middle class back in, then you're looking at a potential civil war, and who the hell wants that? This is 21st century. We're going to Mars. We're going to do something better. Why, if people don't like the way we're feeling, and we're all upset, you're seeing people every day that are upset, and people are trying to say to them, that's foolish of you to be upset. No, baby, it's right. It's right. What is that old cliche? If you're not upset, you don't know what's going on. And that's the truth. We're dealing with that every day. And we have to bring the middle class back. You and I have to feel more confident in our future. And we have to feel, for the people that we are helping, they have to feel more confident. People need jobs. And I'm not, you know, I'm just a poet. I can figure out some things. I can figure out if the government wants to give money to somebody. I got a kid who repairs shoes in Blacksburg, Virginia. He's a great kid. He had to give up repairing shoes because his wife had a baby, and he doesn't have health care. Why do we not subsidize his health care so that he can continue to repair shoes? That's a job. Everything is a jobs program, and for those of you who know me at Tech, you know that every time I have a program, I like flowers. I really do, because if we're not teaching our children, our youngsters, beauty, then what are we teaching them? So when I have Ron Rash, for those of you who would know Ron, he's a wonderful, wonderful novelist. I had Ron Rash to come, he spoke to my class. What I did was I turned the classroom into the mountains. So I rented the plants. We had these big plants and everything. Everybody's complaining, well, Nikki, look at what you spent on flowers. That's a waste. I said, no, that's a jobs program. Because when I rent the flowers, the person that I rent them from gets to hire somebody to deliver them. Mostly they hire Virginia Tech students, so they get to have a job. So then that job means that they get to take their girlfriend out, or they get to buy a new shirt, or they get to stuff. Everything is what I'm saying, and then I'll stop, is a jobs program. And I'm tired of people acting like the kind of jobs that we would like. The hardest working dollar in America is the art dollar, because it turns over and over and over. It's an incredibly important dollar, so that we can have books, so that we can, and I'm a big fan, of course, electronic reading, and so I think every kid, if I had my way, every kid now, kindergarten on, would have a Nook or have a Kindle. They need it. How are our kids going to compete without that? They need it. And I'm a big fan of reading, but not just put down, I wrote 20 books and said, what was it about? Remember speed reading? Then I'll stop. Remember speed reading? Some of you are my age. And Woody Allen had that joke. I always loved that. And he said, you know, I'm taking up speed reading. And they said, the straight man says, well, what have you read? He says, War and Peace. And he said, what is it about? He said, Russia. You just can't inhale books. Abraham Lincoln, you can't. Abraham Lincoln had, 3 books? And look at what he did. And Lincoln was a good man, and I have to say it because I'm here in Tennessee, so I know I'm in Eastern Tennessee. Well, I'm in Central Tennessee right now. But you know, the South lost. When are they going to get over that? I'm not saying they didn't fight valiantly, and I'm not saying, you know, I'm not even going to deal with why, because we all do know why, but nonetheless, you lost. It's one nation, indivisible. Get over it. And let's go into the future. I'm so tired of hearing, you know, it was states' rights to do what? Enslave me? Bad idea. Thought I'd mention that. I'm a native Tennessean. I was born there. During the age of segregation, when you couldn't go to the same amusement park or the same movie theater, when the white guys would cruise up and down the streets and call out to you, when the black guys were afraid of being lynched, But we went to church each Sunday and sang a precious song, and we found a way not to survive. Anything can survive, but to thrive and believe and hope. I'm a native Tennessean. I was born there, but I was only 2 months old when my mother and father moved my sister and me to Cincinnati during the age of segregation, when Dow Drugstore wouldn't serve us, when neighborhoods were red-lined. But at least Mommy could get a job teaching and Daddy could get a job behind a desk, and after all, if you are a college graduate, that's the least you can expect. Though the Pullman Porters took us south each summer and watched over us with an unfailing faith and got us from there to here. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. I was born there, in the only state in rebellion that didn't have to undergo reconstruction, in the volunteer state that sent as many for one side as another, in an area where if I just have to have a car break down, I would prefer any holler to any city neighborhood, but there was no work and no way, and the chronic angers that flared chased us to Ohio. We were not Liza crossing the river, just 4 people, 2 in love and 2 who were loved, who needed to put a rest to the rage. But the rage stayed, and someone had to go. I chose me, but I was born there. So the going was a coming. I'm a native Tennessean. I take no joy in Davy Crockett nor Jim Bowie. They were wrong to be at the Alamo. They were wrong to fight for that theft. I loved James Agee. I loved Thunder Road, though I, a native Tennessean, was not allowed to play a bit part when the crew came to town to film the movie. Ingrid Bergman and Anthony Quinn came to take a walk in the spring rain, and despite it all, I like Andrew Jackson. At least he knew the big guys were wrong. I'm a native Tennessean. I graduated Fisk University in Nashville. I know that the freedmen paid for that school. Nobody gave them anything. Pennies and nickels and prayer and determination. The freedmen paid for it, and many others. I know the American Missionary Society took the money the Jubilee Singers made to save Fisk and used it for other purposes. I know the American Missionary Society was wrong. I was educated by the singers of those songs. I love those songs. How could I not love Nashville? How could I not love Dinah Shore, who invited the Jubilee Singers to sing at the Grand Ole Opry, then had to hear those rumors? She sang on, sang until she saw the USA in her Chevrolet. I once saw her on a plane. I was going to the cabin. She was in first class. I said, "Hey." She smiled and said, "Hey, back." When I got Georgia on my mind, I rode the Chattanooga Choo-Choo to Lookout Mountain. I saw Memphis and was enchanted. From the mighty Mississippi gracefully turning all red to Bill Street beats at midnight, all those blues from so many bloods, decided to turn my blues into Memphis gold. W.C. Handy, Bobby Blue Bland, B.B. King, the late, great Johnny Ace, stacks and stacks of music, American music. The Athens of the South held Tennessee music, but Memphis put the tears to the lonely and crossed over. Everyone wants to rock to my rhythm. I am Memphis. I heard the shots that took Martin. I know who killed the king. I'm a native Tennessean. I know what it is to be free. I am singing the country blues. I am whittling a wooden doll. I'm underground mining coal. I'm running moonshine. I'm a white boy with a banjo, native to West Africa. I'm a black boy with a twang, native to the hills. I am smart. I am cool. I am unafraid. I am free. Yeah, I'm a native Tennessean. Thank you. I'm a big fan of West Virginia, and I am. I think it's the most ethical state in the whole union, and of course the last taboo. Everybody, you can't use the N-word, you can't use pejorative terms about people who make sexual choices, you can't do anything, but you can still talk about hillbilly, and nobody thinks that that's, that shouldn't be. People are mad at West Virginia because West Virginia was right. And West Virginia said, and it ought to be on the West Virginia flag, we will not send our sons to die so that the Shenandoah can have slaves. So West Virginia, they said that. And West Virginia broke away from Virginia, which is right. You have to remember Balatacha, that wonderful group of people. Everybody acts like they were too stupid to know what was going on. You go into those hills, that's going to be a hard living. But you know what else you are? You are free. And they decided it was more important to be free than to be easy. I wrote, it's true. No, these are great people. I wrote a poem because I am a native Tennessean, I am from Knoxville, and of course I grew up in the Great Smoky Mountains. And I know there are issues with the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, but basically I'm going to be in favor of the park because I'm in favor of the wildlife and I'm in favor of trying to save some things, we're going to lose things like the tiger. You know, Ohio's crazy, and I grew up in Ohio. How can you allow people to own a tiger, let alone 17, and to see those magnificent animals being shot? How can we allow that? But mostly, have you noticed the big cats, the buffalo? You had a couple of buffaloes that killed people, which they should do. If you're crazy enough to have a buffalo in your home, it's going to kill you, of course. That's what it does. You got a lion and stuff. The wolves. What we're missing, and I'm sure you're aware of it, is that these are Vietnam vets. 90% of the people owning dangerous, they call them exotic, but they're also dangerous animals, are Vietnam vets. And whatever these men and women, but mostly men, have gone through, these animals are they're finding a way and rubbing up against that power to make themselves all right. We have no idea what's going to be unleashed when we get the Afghanistan soldier, when we get the Iraqi soldier back. We have no idea what these people have been through. We've been at war for 10 years. If you want to know why the country's broke, it's because you can't fight a war for 10 years and you don't have any manufacturing. I don't want the war, period. But you can't have war without manufacturing. And we have outsourced everything, so we're going broke. And everybody says, oh, but aren't you safer? If you're safer, I got a drug for you. You need a drug, because there's no way that you can live in a nation that's been at war for over a decade and think that you're safe. By what right are you safe? By what right do you live between the Atlantic and the Pacific and you say, I should be safe because what, I'm an American? You're killing people. And truly, I'm not interested in dying. I'm only 68. I would like to live a while. You know, I think it'd be interesting. But I do. But I fly in planes, and I drive 81, and lately, a couple of days, I drove 40, for God's sake. 40 is a damn coffin. They drive like they're crazy. But we have no right to think that we can be safe as we wreak havoc on the rest of the world. We have no right. That's the truth. And as I say, I'm not interested in dying, but I do know one thing. If I'm on a plane and somebody blows it up, or somebody walks in here and shoots everybody or something like that, and I get shot and killed, my last thought is going to be, that's the price I paid for being an American. We have to get over this idea. Human beings are vulnerable no matter where we find them. United States, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran. The idea that we're killing people because we don't like them, everybody's like, oh, bin Laden's dead, goody. I don't think so. And I'm not a bin Laden fan, and I'm not an apologist. I just don't think it's a good idea to go in somebody's house in the middle of the night and shoot him and his wife, and then we're supposed to say, now we're safer. I grew up in the South where the Klan did exactly that. It's not right. You don't shoot people. We're America. We stand for the law. If we don't stand for the law, then by what right does this nation want to be existing, let alone prosperous? We stand for something. We have values, damn it, and somebody has to stand for it. And I am being incredibly disappointed that we now have an executive, not to mention a Congress, that acts like, oh, the Constitution was just an idea. The Founding Fathers woke up one morning, scratched their balls, and said, let's scratch out. That's about the size of it. Let me read a poem for y'all, kick me out. When God made mountains. When God made mountains, he made runaway slaves with no book knowledge of the North Star, nor botany classes describing moss on the north side of the trees. He made black men and women unafraid of mountain lions and Florida panthers, and no matter what Teddy Roosevelt tried to show, bears do not like people. Not the cuddly little koala, nor the fierce grizzly, not the mighty polar, nor the humble mountain black bear. Bears and all of their dens are to be avoided. God did make the jackrabbit who could be snared. He made the possum who was slow. He made the clever raccoon and rivers sweet with fish. He made berries and nuts and green leafy things, which were safe and good to eat. When God made runaway slaves, he knew they would need a friend, not only in nature, but of the humankind. So he sent mountaineers. He sent white people who would not own a slave nor be one, who would not kill a slave owner nor die for one. He sent a free white man who believed in change and a free white woman who believed in him. And they made their home amid these mighty mountains. They liked to have a drink or two, so they welcomed Johnny Appleseed, who brought stories and fermented applejack. They liked heroes, so they welcomed the traveling preacher with his message of the man who had trampled out the vineyards where the grapes of wrath are stored. They liked to sing, so they welcomed the runaway slave with his banjo, and friendships were formed. When God made mountains, he made men and women who would need each other, who would respect each other, who would carry the word so that all men and women could be saved. When God made mountains, he said, "Come unto me, ye who need rest." And they call it Appalachia, the original word for peace. And some folks said, "This cannot be done." And the rest said, "Yes, we can." And the clouds settled in that welcoming place between ground and trees and sky, like smoke coming off a coffee pot, like steam coming from a kettle of pinto beans, like the rustic smell of a wood-burning fire at day's end, at home and at peace. Like God has a rocking chair in the sky, smoking his pipe and being very proud of his great Smoky Mountains. I know some of you are here from Wake Forest, and I'm incredibly thrilled. I just want to share this. Maya Angelou, who is, of course, your icon at Wake, and Maya and I had been talking back and forth about a bunch of things, and Maya's Maya. And, you know, Maya is one of the people like Rosa Parks, but different from Rosa was, but you know, they are and you're not. And so getting along with them is really easy. I never have a problem. I met the Queen of England, you know. She is and I'm not. So I never had a problem with, you know, because some people meet the Queen, they be shaking her hand and putting their hands on her and stuff like that. I know better, you know what I'm saying? Because she's the Queen and I'm not. And Maya's like that. So Maya was like, you know, we haven't talked. And so that means I have to go to Maya. I mean, isn't it like no question, you know? I understand that, you know, to some people I'm okay, but I know who I am. So it's like, get in your car and go to Winston-Salem, which I did. It was a lot of fun. I said, Ma, you know, we need to do something. Toni Morrison lost her son. Didn't lose her son. Tony's son died. And people like their children, I guess. And so it's incredibly sad sometimes. You know, you lose a kid. And so Tony's been sad. And I said, Ma, why don't we do something for Tony? And she was, what? You know, she's got that. I said, I think we should celebrate Tony, because one of the things that happens, and it's sad to me, you can't get around it. I wrote a poem on Rose about that. The very best thing that happens to you in one respect is that you die. And all of these people come and they talk about how wonderful you were. Now, the downside of that, of course, is that you're not there to hear it. So I thought, why don't we, Toni Morrison has that great line, it's a great gift to be able to miss someone before they're gone. And I thought, okay, let's have a funeral before she's dead. So we're coming down to Wake Forest on September 11th, 2012. And what I'm trying to get Tech to do for me, Tony's in a wheelchair. You know, Maya's on oxygen, and Tony's on a wheelchair, right? I'm probably going to drop dead, but I'm worried, you know, because it's Maya and Nikki. And what I'm trying to get Tech to do is give me, because we can make anything. And that's what I said to the president. So his name is Charles Steger. I said, Dr. Steger, Tech can do anything. And he's like, no, Nikki, we can't. Yes, you can. And no, sometimes you just have to tell them who they are. And what I want you do, what I want is a hydraulic so that Tony in her wheelchair can be lifted up. They did it for Franklin Roosevelt, and Tony's as important as Franklin. So we're going to be able to do that, and we're going to run Maya's oxygen there so we don't trail, so it doesn't, nobody's going to trip over it, so that they can come to the podium. I'm excited about this show because, one, if everything goes the way it should, it's going to be incredible. What we're saying is come and bring a paragraph. And what we're doing is inviting about 50 people to come and read from Toni Morrison, anything from Toni Morrison. We have defined, of course, the paragraph as 6 to 8 lines, no more than 8 lines. Because, you know, Toni's like Faulkner. She's in, you know, you start to read a paragraph, you'd be there for 5 years. So we're definitely, going to cut it off. And so now Tony will be able to hear. The history makers are coming, they're filming it. We're probably going to be on BET. And we really think that C-SPAN should do it, not just Book World, C-SPAN, because clearly Tony is important enough. I think that I just wanted to share that because some of you are going to be around if you're not doing anything on September 11th, which is a Tuesday. I think you should come down. It's free because all the programs I do are free because there's no way to afford the talent that we're going to have in that room. And if you pay one person, nothing makes anybody angrier than, you pay somebody and you don't pay somebody else. That starts a problem. So I solved that one. I love me for things like that. It's free. No, otherwise, you look at it. I mean, we're really hoping, of course, for Jessie Norman. If anybody knows Jessie, we're just writing her. I don't know Miss Norman, but Tony loves her so much. And so we're just trying to get on a diva's calendar, because it'd just be a thrill for Tony to Tony likes her. Tony's like, I want to be Jessie Norman when I grow up. And he said, Tony, you're already too old. But no, she's wonderful. We did, and I've been doing this, and again, this is nothing except that it's poetry. And I wanted to kind of share this because we have more. This is VT Reads, Virginia Tech Reads. And what happened here is I edited a book. I just like to share this for a second. I edited a book called The 100 Best African American Poems, and there's an asterisk, but I cheated. And I cheated because this is the kind of book. Do I have a copy of the book? No, I didn't bring it with. This is the kind of book, the 100 Best, is the kind of book that a publisher brings to you. My publisher is named Dominique Rocca. She's a nice person. Publishers are notoriously cheap. Any of you who've been writing books, you know that. And so Dominique called me one day and she said, Nikki, because she's in Chicago, she's at Naperville actually. She said, Nikki, are you coming to Chicago? And I said, no, I'm not, because I wasn't. She said, anytime soon. I said, Dom, I'm not coming to Chicago, because I try not to cross Chicago during winter months, particularly because you get stuck at O'Hare. And she said, well, if I sent you a ticket, if I put a ticket on United for you, would you come? And I said, oh, she wants something. And, you got to know when you have the upper hand. You know what I'm saying? You try to be nice about these things, but you must know when you have the upper hand. And I thought, she wants something, and I'm going to go to Chicago, and I'm going to find out what. I said, can I pick the place to have lunch? Because she's notoriously cheap. And she said, yeah, I'll meet you. So I did, because I have a favorite restaurant in Chicago. And it was just really nice. And you know how people meander, they like nattering on. And I'm trying to think of what she wants. She said, well, we're going to publish the 100 best African-American poems. And we wanted to know if you wanted to edit it. Well, I can say this to all of you here, because you probably already know that. The answer is yes. No matter what name. I have a foundation. It's a small foundation because I'm a poor woman. But the name of the foundation is The Answer is Yes. Because I hate no. I hate people to tell me no. I hate no about anything. No. The answer is yes. If you get it done, you got it done. And if you didn't get it done, you're sorry. But the answer is always yes. That's the truth. It's always. So I said yes. Now, I'm sure we all know in this room, and I share with my students, if you only do what you're being asked to do, to quote Stevie Wonder, you haven't done nothing. If I do the 100 best African-American poems, I literally go from Phyllis Wheatley to, if I'm really pushing it, to Imamu Baraka. If I just have to do it, Tupac, because I wouldn't want to let anything go. But that's going to be it. I have no room for the coming kids. There's a reason. I grew up in the Baptist church. There's a reason that church has Sunday school. If you don't bring the kids in, you're not going to have church pretty soon. So I'm sitting there thinking about this project, and it's like, okay, what can I do? I put an asterisk, and the book actually has 221 poems in it. It does. And I numbered it 1 to 100, but then I stuffed poems in all the way. So it was nice. So we got these, because otherwise you don't get the kids. You got to have the kids, right? And so I was thinking, okay, now that I've got this, I had the book. It's like, what do we need? And I thought, of course, we need a CD. We need to hear the poems read. And of course, some of us in this room are deltas, because I've met you. And I thought, of course, immediately of our good soror, Ruby D. And I thought, okay, you know how you wait? Because again, Ruby D is Ruby D and I'm not. So I'm just waiting till the spirits say, call Ruby. And I woke up one morning and it's like, call Ruby. And I pick up the phone, and she doesn't answer her phone, as you know, but her person does. And I said, this is Nikki Giovanni. Is Ruby around? Oh, yes, Miss Giovanni, she's right here. And it's like, yes. And I said, Ruby, what would it take to get you to come to Virginia Tech? And for those of you who know Ruby, just ask, Nikki, just ask. So I do a good Ruby D. And I said, well, I'm asking. Now, she doesn't travel alone. She travels with her niece because she just turned 60. She just turned 87 yesterday. Yeah, so she travels with her niece. I said, you got it. It would have been first class, but there is no first class anymore. It's all regional jet. So we did that. But then I did a thing because I knew I was doing it right. I said, I'm on a roll. I called our soror, our good soror, Novella Nelson. And I said, Novella, Ruby's coming down to read with us. Will you come? Ruby's coming. I said, yeah. She said, I'll be there. Yes. Now, Dr. Steger likes me. I really believe he does. I really do. But you know how you see people and you know that they would like to avoid you? Because I don't see him that often, so when I do, he knows he's in trouble. And he was walking down the sidewalk at Skelton, and I had just pulled up, and I said, there's Charles, let me. And Dr. Steger, and you can just see him go, not Nikki. And I said, how you doing? He said, I'm fine, Nikki. How are you? I said, will you read with us? And he said, yes, because I said, I'll get a poem. He said, okay, set it up with Sandy. And I said, Ruby D is coming. Now, he's known me 20-something years, right? I said, Ruby D is coming. And his eyes glazed over. He said, Ruby D? And I said, I'll be damned, I'm a star. None of that from him, He said, what can I do? And I said, well, I always have something. I said, you can have the dinner. He said, oh, fine. I mean, he was just thrilled. Ruby D is going, oh, and I get to read with her. And I said, yeah. Charles read The Negro Speaks of River. And what I wanted was to show that African-American poems are not just for African-Americans, they're for everybody. There was a big fight about The Negro Speaks of Rivers because it's iconic. And so everybody said, well, why did you let Dr. Steger read it? I said, because he's the president of Virginia Tech and you not. And that was easy. And Ruby D, all Ruby wanted was Gwendolyn Brooks. And so it was just a question of, Ruby's reading Gwen, and people, including my good friend Joanne Gavin, said, well, I want to read Gwen. I said, no, actually. Ruby's reading Gwen, get over it. And Novella wanted Tupac. So, we handled that. I mean, it really just worked. So we did this, and we went into Jeff Dalton's studio, and we made this DVD. And the book has a CD, because we could afford to pay everybody for the CD. But the DVD, we just didn't have the money. So the only person on the DVD is going to be me with Ruby, not the only star is going to be Ruby D with me. We're reading A Brownsville Mother Loiters in Mississippi. Meanwhile, a Mississippi mother burns bacon. And Ruby and I read that together. But the rest of it is just going to be Virginia Tech. And I brought this here because you're counselors. And we are selling this, actually. So I'm sure I'm improper here some way. What we're selling for is $5, because what we're trying to do is, you can do anything in the university if you don't cost them money. So we're just trying to make our money back. We're not going to make any money. You know that at $5. But I had a few, and I thought maybe you would have people that you're working with that you might say to yourself, this might be a good thing to listen to. You can copy it. I mean, I don't care. The art community needs to give more out. And so I'm just doing that. So we're just trying to find a way to get this out, and we're trying to find a way to do the next thing. I'm sure this thing we're doing with Tony, and as I said, that'll be on editing, it'll be on YouTube. There'll be no way. I don't even want to control it. I want everybody to be able to see that. And I will say this about Tony. I'll leave Tony alone. The year, I love Tony so much. The year that Tony won the Nobel. Now, I don't know what you know about writers, but we are a competitive group. We all seem very cool, and, it's like, oh, isn't that, we're thrilled, But, you want yours too, you know what I'm saying? And so, you get a couple of people in. So Tony won the Nobel, and I, of course, sent her flowers. I've known Tony forever, and I was just thrilled because Charles Johnson was ugly. I don't know what you know about Charles Johnson, but he's an ugly little man, and he was ugly about Tony winning it. He wrote those little stupid books that he writes, and he's mad like, I don't think that Toni Morrison should win the Nobel. Well, can you read, baby? Because if you can, you know that she's one of the best writers in the English language. Get over it, Charles. And that's the truth. So she won it. I sent her flowers, and, it's just like one of those really nice things. And then I was feeling like, wow, I'm a good writer. You know how you... and you're not particularly envious, but you're just like, But then Dr. Baker at Texas Tech named a bat after me. So I got to call Tony and say, well, you want something? I got a bat and you don't. So I had a good time. That's the truth. You try to be mature, you don't always make it. I don't know if any of you remember D'Angelo. Some of us in this room. He's a great kid. He had some problems, you know, and everybody, it's not easy being a star. And I keep saying to Virginia Tech, I wish, when I retire, actually, I'm going to come back and teach a course called Stardom. Because I think a lot of people get lost in it. You know, and D'Angelo, the money and the women and everything, you know, it got to be too much. I get a phone call at school, and it's from D'Angelo. And it's like I'm hearing a nervous voice, because D'Angelo's, 40 years old now. He's blown the last 10 years of his life. And he said, you know, Miss Giovanni, this is D'Angelo. His name Michael D'Angelo. And I said, hi, D'Angelo, how you doing? You know, because I remember he's a soul singer. For those of you who don't know him, soul singer. And he said, well, I'm trying to get back into the studio, and I wondered if you'd like to work with me. And I said, Mike, I'd love to work with you, you know, because the answer is yes. And so I said, I'd love to work with you. And I was trying to think, we talked back and forth. He's had a lot of loss, including the woman that he loved died of breast cancer. So a lot of things have come in to make him sad. And I've had sadness. My mother and my sister died within 6 weeks of each other. We had the situation in Blacksburg. We had the situation on April 16th. You know, so a lot of sadness. And I was trying to figure out what? I know I can't write for D'Angelo because I don't want, he was looking for a poem that would express him. I can't do that, but I am a mother. And D'Angelo is actually 3 years younger than my son. My son just turned 43. I wrote a poem, and I'm going to share it. This is actually the first reading of this poem, so I'd be interested if you think it's working. It's called When the Phone Trembles, because I'm a 60s person. And the one thing that we don't like is a phone ringing at midnight, because it's always bad news. It's always something you don't want to hear. When the phone trembles. When the phone trembles after midnight, I never think of good news, someone's birthday or an overseas friend forgetting the time difference. I never smell apples baking or nutmeg dancing on sweet potatoes, yeast rolls rising, fish frying. I always look for a way to hold myself together. Being a 60s person, I know you have to be strong. When the phone trembles after midnight, I take a deep breath, reach for my glasses, think of my son, and I pray. Thank you. You know, I was just trying to find, because I don't know if any of you all are, I mean, you're counselors, and so even you must be nervous. And, you know, you just want to make sure that all your people are okay, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm excited about that. I would like to, am I running you over or anything? Oh. Speaking of the poem, let me share this with because this was real. You know, Hurricane Irene came in, and so the dedication for Martin Luther King on the mall had to be postponed, right? And so I get a call from Mr. Johnson, who's the head of the MLK Foundation. They had asked me to come and read a poem. Honest to God, you don't know this, but the reason people like me is I keep programs on time. And so this is my program. No, I mean, you know, you more or less I can do what I think I'm doing here. But when you're on somebody else's program, you just come on and do what you're told to do and get the hell off, you know, because nobody's interested in you. So, well, you know, in the real sense of the word, and I'm humble about things like that. So Mr. Johnson calls and he says, well, we're going to redo it because, you know, we had 1,200,000 tickets out there. And now we're going to scale back. So we scaled back to like 50,000 people. So he calls me, he said, Nick, you know, actually Caitlin, I was talking to Caitlin. And she says, you know, we got 50,000 people coming, so we're going to cut the program back. I said, fine, Caitlin. She said, will you still be able to come? I said, Caitlin, we clear for Martin. I mean, it's just a couple of things, but absolutely. I mean, Martin, we only had Martin Luther King for 13 years. Because he's 26, he died at 39. We clear for Martin. He gave his last great measure, to quote Lincoln there. Not a problem. She said, well, it's going to be the president of Alpha Phi Alpha, which King's fraternity, for those of you who don't know. It's going to be the president of the foundation, Mr. Johnson. It's going to be the President of the United States, Barack Obama, and it's going to be Aretha Franklin, because she wants to come, and she's in North Carolina, so Aretha will be there, and you. I said, you got it, because I'm like 2 minutes, it's not a problem. I will be there. Then my aunt, I was talking to my aunt who's 90, and Agnes said, oh, when are they going to have the dedication? I said, it's going to be Sunday the 16th. She said, I want to meet the president. Well, you only have one time to see him, and she's excited about him, so it's like, okay, give me your birthday, and you do all of that stuff. Because I figured, they worried about my 90-year-old aunt doing something to that boy. They crazy. So that's the truth. So, it means a lot to the old lady. So it's like, no, we're going to get this one done. So I'm taking my aunt with me. So this is working. Well, of course, what they thought was that everybody that had come would not come again. But of course, once they set the date again, everybody started coming. So now all of a sudden Joe's there, and John and Lewis is there, and Jesse Jackson's there. Everybody's gonna be there. I got to see Dorothy Cotton, whom I hadn't seen in forever, just a wonderful kind of thing, but everybody now wants to speak. I was laughing because Joe Lowry comes in. Joe just turned 9. We didn't lose. Fred Shuttlesworth died on the 5th, and Joe turned 90 on the 6th, right? So the numbers are thinning. Joe Lowry comes into the room. We're in the green room now, and I'm laughing because it's nonetheless true. We're in the green room, and Joe, Joe's got that voice, where's breakfast? And it's like, no, this was the scaled back event. There's no breakfast. No breakfast? And it's like, Joe, there's no breakfast. But my aunt used to date him, so she's like, Joseph Eccles, there's no breakfast. And it's like, oh, God. And I'm like, I don't know her, and I don't know what they're talking about. It was more fun. They got invited to the White House, and so I guess Joe got to eat. I trust that he did. I wrote a poem for Martin, and I was invited, actually, to write a poem. And the other thing that you have to know, and I say this to you as fellow, or sister actually, adults, you have to know when you've done your best. And people take that away from you. I said it to my class all the time. People will take it away from you and try to make you do the next thing. Everything is not the next thing. So when I've got the call, originally from the foundation, to write a poem for Martin, my answer had to be the one word that I dislike, no. Because I knew I could not write a poem better than the poem I had written. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't write a better poem, and I'm not going to write a worse one. That's a huge no-no. It'd make you crazy. So they read it and went over it. I wrote this poem for the 35th anniversary, if that's the word, of his death, when the Smithsonian did their retrospective on Martin, called In the Spirit of Martin. And what I wanted to do, I've written about Martin a lot, and I think if I'm lucky and I live another 20 years, I'm 68, if I get into my 80s, I will be able to once again write about Martin, because life is a hologram, and you keep going around and around, and you learn things. But right now, I'm still in the same spot when I wrote this. What I wanted to do with this poem, because we forget, we have a generation of people now who only see Martin as an old man. They only see him as someone who got shot, who was assassinated. And I wanted to take it back to when we met him. He was only 26, and I have students that age who could not have done what he did. Mrs. Parks, that Thursday, December 1st, refused to give up her seat. Mr. Tate, James Tate, had her arrested. She is now going to go on trial. She will be arraigned on Monday, December the 4th. A wonderful woman who gets lost in all of this for the most part, Joanne Robinson, Joanne Robinson, who was the head of the English department at Alabama State, said, she was also the newly elected president of the Women's Political Caucus, said, let's have a one-day boycott. So we have Mrs. Parks said no, Dr. Robinson said yes, and we are now going to, on Monday morning, have a boycott. These are the two women. Now, we know what's going to happen there. Monday morning, 6:30, when the buses start to roll, no black people are on the bus. So as everybody is looking out, there are no black people on the bus. I think it was around 10 o'clock that Ms. Parks was arraigned. People stayed off the bus, and they had a mass meeting. Now, we're going to start to meet the men. I'm in favor of the men. You have to keep them busy, and you have to keep them off the street. But you do. But now we're having a mass meeting, and of course, E.D. Nixon, Edgar David Nixon, who is Mrs. Parks' neighbor, actually. E.D. is a Pullman porter. And one of the things he has to do is he has to go to work. because in those days, you didn't get time off, so you either go to work or you don't make any money. So he's got to run actually to Chicago. That means he's leaving Montgomery, going to Atlanta, and then they're going to go on up to Chicago. As ED is leaving, he literally says, oh, be sure to get that new young preacher to speak, that new Reverend King, because Martin hadn't been in Montgomery long enough to have annoyed anybody. So it's human. And so what we're going to have is this 26-year-old wonderful young man who accepts this challenge. Now, you're going to hear a lot about how and why and all of his angst, but Martin was a prince, and princes don't angst. So I've never been a fan that Martin wasn't sure what he was going to do. Martin was a prince of the black community. He comes from an old and a great family. He damn well did know what he was going to do. But he also knew if he did it, that a clock is going to start ticking. And he knows that if he takes to that podium, he knows that he is not going to die an old man. He's not going to see his grandchildren. He's not going to walk with his children to marry them and do things like that. He is going to become this voice, and he's going to give over his life, and that's what's going to happen. But we forget that America was an incredibly smug nation when we look at that 50s. We had just come out of World War II, which was a 4-year war in which we did do manufacturing. It wasn't the war that got us out of the Depression. It was the manufacturing, but that's another discussion. We had television. Everybody was excited. Remember a little television, the little Zenith TV. We had television. And television was trying to do this American myth, which people actually still believe in it. People are looking at TV, and you're looking at crap like Father Knows Best, right? And this is supposed to make sense. So you've got Kitten and Bud and Princess, right? And that's the truth. Kitten and Bud ultimately will die, of course, of drug overdose. For those of you who know your history in terms of TV, Princess is going to actually move to Mayberry, North Carolina, become Andy Griffin's girlfriend. But actually, I have to admit, it was always Margaret that intrigued me, because Margaret would go around, you know, in her little dresses and just be so very perfect. I was so glad when she left. And she not only left Jim, because he was an alcoholic, as you well know. She left Jim, but she left Earth and moved up to Vulcan and married Ambassador Spock, where she had, right? She's the mother of Spock. Now we know, and this is sad, but it's American nonetheless true, Jim Anderson was an insurance salesman. So we know that he's Springfield, Illinois. He's actually doing business with the White Citizens Council. It would have been a better story if they had done that, if they had shown that. I was laughing about kids. I'm not a big fan of children. I know that, you know, they're kind of necessary to keep things going, but you know, I'm not your girl like, oh, you know, but, you know, you try to be nice. I mean, no, after what you go through to have them, you want somebody to say they're pretty and smart, but, you know, you do. But if I don't hit anything, you don't know that, but that's true. But if I had had a kid like Beaver, I would have beaten the living crap. All of that Leave It to Beaver just made me absolutely crazy. You know, it's stupid. And I can tell you this in case you were often wondering, you say, well, what did he do? You remember Ozzie and Harriet, and Ozzie had that kind of stutter, you know, and Ozzie would leave the house, and it just intrigued me because you never saw what he did. You saw what Harriet did, you saw the boys, you know, ultimately Ricky's going to sing and help take care of the family. But Ozzie would leave the house every day at about 3 o'clock. And I was, you know, in Knoxville, Tennessee now with my grandmother, and I'm like, what happens every day at 3 o'clock? Well, the first number comes out. So I finally realized, oh, Ozzie is a number runner. Because you didn't see anything else that he did. He had on his sweater, he'd go out and he'd come back. I thought, wow, that made sense. And of course, just in case you're on Jeopardy and you have to answer these questions, but of course what totally intrigued me, of course, was the Donna Reed show. And I know it's just because I'm black, and where I come from, women come home. Now, my grandmother worked at the high school. She was a cook. And in the summer, when the high school was closed, she cooked for a white family. She would come across, for those of you who know Knoxville, Cal Johnson Park. And by the time she started up her steps, she is rolling her stockings off, right? When she walks to the door, she's kicking her shoes off. So I'm not used to seeing women running around the house in high heels and stockings. So I am saying, I was one of those curious children, like, why does she have on stockings and high heels? Why is she doing that? And remember, Donna Reed always had that little apron. And now my grandmother had an apron, but it was a working apron. And that was just a little lace apron. And I would be like thumbing through, you know, the encyclopedias and stuff, and I'm a World War II fan. And so I was always reading. And of course, when you get to the French horse, that's, well, they had little lace aprons, and they had stockings, and they had high heels. And I was like, whoa. That's the truth. Whoa. Donna Reed is a French whore. And I didn't want to say anything to my grandmother, you know, because she wouldn't let me watch it. And I was like, wow. So when I was thinking about putting this together, I wanted to deal with what was and what could be. Now, we know if Martin had stayed with us, we know that he would have been a rapper, because we know that everything that Martin did was in cadence. Actually, most of his speeches have already been put to music because he's a perfect cadence. So the speech that we call the I Have a Dream speech, which is really the March on Washington speech, if Martin were here today, it would have been, you know, we are here to cash a check, you know, and he would have. And we know that the first person to be arrested for civil disobedience in the United States was Henry David Thoreau. And we know that Thoreau was friends with a guy named Ralph Emerson. And actually, nobody likes Emerson. Any of you English majors, you didn't like him either. He's really just stuck up and crazy. And so we know when Thoreau was in jail, you know, Emerson, literally, you know, one of those things, and he goes to see him. He called Thoreau David. And he went to that, you know, David, what are you doing in jail? And, of course, Thoreau looked at him and said, Ralph, what are you doing out? And he was absolutely right. There's an injustice. Why aren't you with us? We know that if Martin had stayed around, he would have, in fact, had a tattoo, because everybody has a tattoo. I do. Mine says Thug Life. But, yeah. I know Daddy King would not have allowed Martin to have Thug Life, but he would have had a, you know, vote, one of those kind of things. I'm sure he would have had, you know, something responsible. I'm sure he would have had, you know, braids. And I know some people say, I said that, somebody said, oh, he would have had dreads. But, you know, dreads do what they want to do. And Martin was anal retentive, as almost all great people are. So he would have had braids, because you can make braids do what you want them to do. That becomes very important. And as you know, Martin was a pool shark. And it used to worry his father. He would go to Morehouse every day, and he would come back home with more money than he left. It really did worry Daddy King a lot. And it was like, Martin, are you doing that? Well, it's going to work, because once we have this boycott, the people in the juke joints are finally going to waver just a little bit. It's a normal thing. And Martin is now, you know, of course, some of it was the church, but everything wasn't about the church. A lot of it was about the people who had to be on the bus. Nobody ever says, how come everybody knew Rosa Parks? Because she lived in the projects. And everybody knew that she was on the bus because she had to be. If she had lived in a detached house, things would have been different. If it had been Coretta King, somebody would have said, how come Martin didn't give her the car? Or if it had been Juanita Abernathy, somebody would have said, how come Ralph didn't carry her? So these are the kind of things. So now we've got Martin is down there dealing with the juke joint. And one of the guys said, you know, they call him Doc. They said, Doc, you know, we'll continue walking if you can beat me, because he thought he was good. They didn't know Martin. If you can beat me at a game of pool, and Martin is doing that, this is a lovely pool. And the guy's like, yeah, you know, and he said, is that the diamond and you break? And they say, yeah, Doc, you know, come on, let's shoot some pool. And he said, well, okay. So I should break? And they said, yeah, Doc, you have to break. And Martin, and of course, ran the tablet. And the boycott continued. He said, we didn't know you were a pool shark. He says, lots you don't know about me. Martin was a great man, and he always had a good sense of humor. He always had a good feeling. I wrote a poem in the spirit of Martin. This is a sacred poem. Blood has been shed to consecrate it. Wash your hands, remove your shoes, bow your head. I have a dream. That was a magical time. Hi-ho, silver, away. Oh, Cisco, oh, Pancho, here I come to save the day. I want the world to see what they did to my boy. No, 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 I'm not gonna move. If we are wrong, then the Constitution of the United States is wrong. Montgomery, Birmingham, Selma, 4 little girls, constant threats, constant harassment, constant fear. SCLC, Ralph and Martin, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver. Ed Sullivan, how long? Not long. But what, Mr. Thoreau said to Mr. Emerson, are you doing out? This is a letter from Birmingham City Jail. This is a eulogy for Albany. This is a water hose for Anniston. This is a thank you to Diane Nash. This is a flag for James Farmer. This is a how can I make it without you for Ella Baker. This is for the red clay of Georgia that yielded black men of courage, black men of vision, black men of hopes, bent over cotton or sweet potatoes or pool tables and baseball diamonds, playing for a chance to live free and breathe easy and have enough money to take care of the folks they love. This is why we can't wait. That swirling Mississippi wind, the Alabama pine, that Tennessee dust defiling the clothes the women washed, those hot winds the lemonade couldn't cool, that let the women know we too must overcome. This is for Fannie Lou Hamer, Joanne Robinson, Septima Clark, Daisy Bates, all the women who said, baby, 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 I know you didn't mean to lose your job. I know you didn't mean to gamble the rent money. I know you didn't mean to hit me. I know the Lord is going to make a way. I know I'm leaning on the everlasting arms. How much pressure does the earth exert on carbon to make a diamond? How long does the soil push against the flesh, molding, molding, molding the moan that becomes a cry that bursts forth, crystalline, unbreakable, priceless, incomparable Martin, I made my vow to the Lord that I never would turn back. How much pressure do the sins of the world press against the heart of a man who becomes the voice of his people? He should have had a tattoo, you know, Freedom Now or something like that. Should have braided his hair, carried his pool cue in a mahogany case, wafted that wonderful laugh over a plate of skillet fried chicken, drop biscuits, dandelion greens on the side. This is a sacred poem. Open your arms, turn your palms up, feel the spirit of greatness, and be redeemed.